Hello, and welcome to the Sands of Time. What if I told you that a single CIA operation in the Middle East during the late 1980s involved more double agents, betrayals, and political machinations than most Hollywood thrillers? Welcome to a deep dive into the shadows of history, where today we're uncovering how America's intelligence apparatus fundamentally altered the trajectory of Middle Eastern politics between 1987 and 1991. Picture this: it's 1987, and deep inside CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, something is terribly wrong. Assets are disappearing, safe houses are being raided, operations that took years to build are crumbling overnight. The agency's most prized possession, their network of human spies across the Middle East, is being systematically destroyed from the inside out. This isn't just another spy story. This is the untold tale of how the CIA's love affair with espionage during 4 of the most volatile years in Middle Eastern history created ripple effects that would define regional politics for decades to come. We're talking about a period when the agency was so desperate for intelligence, so hungry for that perfect human source, that they made decisions that would haunt American foreign policy long after the Cold War ended. Today we're diving deep into the shadowy world of CIA operations between 1987 and 1991, a time when the Middle East was a chessboard of competing interests, and every move could mean the difference between peace and war. We'll uncover how the agency's recruitment strategies, their successes, and most importantly, their catastrophic failures helped shape the modern Middle East in ways most people never realize. But first, let me set the stage for you. The year 1987 wasn't just any year for American intelligence. The Iran-Contra scandal had just exploded into public view, revealing the CIA's secret arms deals and covert funding operations. Congressional hearings were dissecting every aspect of agency operations, and public trust in American intelligence was at an all-time low. Yet paradoxically, this was also the moment when the CIA doubled down on human intelligence gathering in the Middle East like never before. Why the Middle East? Why this particular moment? The answer lies in a perfect storm of geopolitical circumstances that made the region the most critical intelligence battleground on Earth. The Iran-Iraq war was raging, creating opportunities and dangers in equal measure. The Soviet Union was beginning to show cracks, changing the entire dynamic of Cold War proxy conflicts. Palestinian resistance movements were evolving, Israeli intelligence was more active than ever, and new players were emerging who would define Middle Eastern politics for the next 3 decades. Let me tell you about Sarah Mitchell, though that wasn't her real name. She was a CIA case officer who arrived in Damascus in early 1987 with one mission: rebuild the agency's human intelligence network in Syria from scratch. What she discovered there would challenge everything the CIA thought it knew about running spies in the Middle East. Mitchell's story begins with a simple observation that would prove prophetic. Unlike their European or Latin American operations, CIA activities in the Middle East faced a unique challenge. The intersection of tribal loyalty, religious conviction, and political ideology created motivational structures that Western intelligence agencies barely understood. Traditional recruitment methods, the ones that worked so well during the Cold War in Berlin or Vienna, were not just ineffective in places like Damascus, Baghdad, or Tehran, they were counterproductive. The agency's approach to human intelligence had always been transactional. Find someone with access to valuable information, identify their weakness or desire, and create a relationship based on mutual benefit. Money, ideology, compromise, or ego, the classic motivations that drove people to betray their countries in service of American intelligence. But in the Middle East of the late 1980s, these traditional levers were failing spectacularly. Consider what happened in Baghdad during the height of the Iran-Iraq war. The CIA had identified a mid-level official in Saddam Hussein's government who had access to military planning documents. The approach was textbook. They discovered he needed money for his daughter's medical treatment abroad, and they offered to pay. The recruitment seemed successful for months. Intelligence flowed, payments were made, and Langley was pleased with the quality of information. But there was a problem the CIA didn't see coming. Their asset wasn't just providing information to them. He was part of an elaborate double-agent operation run by Iraqi intelligence, feeding carefully crafted disinformation designed to mislead American understanding of Iraqi military capabilities and intentions. The false intelligence influenced US policy decisions and military assessments in ways that would prove costly years later. This wasn't an isolated incident. Similar patterns were emerging across the region. The CIA's human intelligence operations were being penetrated, manipulated, and turned against American interests with disturbing frequency. Yet rather than stepping back to reassess their approach, the agency's response was to recruit more aggressively, to cast wider nets, to build larger networks. The psychology behind this decision reveals something fundamental about institutional culture within the CIA during this period. Human intelligence had always been considered the crown jewel of espionage, the most prestigious and valuable form of intelligence gathering. Case officers built their careers on successful recruitments, and the agency's entire identity was tied to its ability to convince foreign nationals to betray their own countries for American interests. When these operations began failing in the Middle East, the institutional response wasn't to question the approach, but to assume the problem was insufficient scale or inadequate resources. More money, more officers, more operations. Surely the solution to failed human intelligence was more human intelligence. This mindset led to some of the most ambitious and ultimately catastrophic CIA operations of the entire Cold War period. Between 1988 and 1990, the agency launched what insiders called the Middle East Initiative, a coordinated effort to establish comprehensive human intelligence networks across every major country in the region simultaneously. The scope was breathtaking. CIA operatives were working to recruit sources inside the governments of Syria, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Israel. They were targeting military officers, government officials, religious leaders, business executives, and academics. The goal was nothing less than complete intelligence dominance of the Middle East at precisely the moment when the region was undergoing its most significant transformation since World War II. But let me tell you about Ahmad Hassan, a name that still makes veteran CIA officers uncomfortable when mentioned in classified briefings. Hassan was a colonel in the Syrian army who became one of the agency's most valuable sources in 1988. His recruitment seemed like a textbook success story. He had access to Syrian military planning. He was motivated by genuine political disagreements with the Assad regime, and he demonstrated his value by providing accurate intelligence about Syrian operations in Lebanon. For 18 months, Hassan fed the CIA detailed information about Syrian troop movements, military capabilities, and strategic planning. His intelligence helped the agency understand Syrian intentions during some of the most complex negotiations in Lebanese politics. American policymakers were making decisions based on Hassan's reports, and the CIA considered him one of their most successful Middle Eastern recruitments. The truth was far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone at Langley realized. Hassan was indeed providing accurate intelligence about Syrian military operations, but he was doing so with the full knowledge and approval of Syrian intelligence services. He was what intelligence professionals call a controlled asset, someone who provides genuine information while serving the interests of his actual masters. The Syrian strategy was sophisticated and patient. They allowed Hassan to build credibility with his CIA handlers by providing accurate but ultimately inconsequential military intelligence. Meanwhile, they were using his position to map CIA operations throughout Syria, identify American intelligence objectives, and understand how the agency was processing and analyzing Middle Eastern intelligence. When Syrian intelligence finally activated Hassan for his real mission in early 1990, the results were devastating. In a single coordinated operation, Syrian authorities rolled up an entire CIA network that had taken 3 years to build. Safe houses were raided, communication systems were compromised, and assets across Syria found themselves arrested or fled the country overnight. But the damage went far beyond Syria. Hassan's information allowed Syrian intelligence to share details about CIA operational methods with Allied services across the region. The techniques the agency was using to recruit and run sources in Damascus were being used in Baghdad, Tehran, and Beirut, with similar vulnerabilities. The intelligence disaster that followed became known within CIA circles as Black April, though the name never appeared in any official documentation. In April 1990, CIA human intelligence operations across the Middle East suffered simultaneous penetrations that suggested coordinated counterintelligence activities among regional powers. The Iraqi network that had seemed so promising was revealed to be largely controlled by Baghdad's intelligence services. Iranian sources were providing information that consistently understated Tehran's military capabilities and political intentions. Even assets in allied countries like Egypt and Jordan were proving unreliable in ways that suggested sophisticated manipulation. The psychological impact on CIA personnel was profound. Case officers who had built their entire careers on the belief that they could identify and exploit human weaknesses found themselves questioning their fundamental assumptions about espionage. The agency's confidence in its Middle Eastern operations was shattered, but the institutional response was telling. Rather than acknowledging systematic problems with their approach to human intelligence in the region, many within the CIA blamed individual failures or insufficient resources. The cultural investment in human intelligence as the premier form of espionage was so deep that questioning its effectiveness in the Middle East felt like questioning the agency's core identity. This institutional blindness had consequences that extended far beyond intelligence gathering. The CIA's flawed human intelligence was feeding into policy decisions at the highest levels of American government. Military assessments, diplomatic strategies, and economic policies were all being shaped by information that was incomplete, manipulated, or entirely fabricated. Consider the impact on American understanding of regional military balances during this period. CIA assessments consistently underestimated Iraqi military capabilities while overestimating Iranian strength. These intelligence failures influenced American policy decisions that would prove costly during the Gulf War and in subsequent Middle Eastern engagements. The agency's problems with human intelligence were also affecting American relationships with regional allies. Israeli intelligence services, for example, were becoming increasingly skeptical of CIA competence as they watched American operations being rolled up by Arab intelligence services. This skepticism led to reduced intelligence sharing and coordination, weakening the overall Western intelligence position in the region. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, despite its internal problems, was watching American intelligence failures with great interest. Soviet advisors in Syria, Iraq, and other Middle Eastern countries were learning valuable lessons about CIA operational methods and vulnerabilities that they would exploit in other theaters of Cold War competition. The irony was striking. At precisely the moment when the Middle East was becoming more strategically important to American interests, the CIA's ability to understand the region through human intelligence was deteriorating rapidly. The agency that had successfully run operations against the Soviet Union for decades was being outmaneuvered by intelligence services with far fewer resources but much deeper cultural understanding of their operational environment. By 1991, the convergence of several factors created a moment of reckoning for CIA operations in the Middle East. The Gulf War had exposed significant intelligence gaps in American understanding of Iraqi capabilities and intentions. The collapse of the Soviet Union was changing the strategic landscape in fundamental ways, and the agency's human intelligence networks, built at enormous cost over 4 years, were proving unreliable when they were needed most. The lessons learned during this period would reshape American intelligence gathering in the Middle East for the next 3 decades. The CIA began investing more heavily in technical intelligence gathering, satellite surveillance, and signals intelligence. The romantic notion of the case officer developing human sources through personal relationships gave way to more systematic and technology-assisted approaches. But perhaps more importantly, this period revealed fundamental truths about intelligence gathering in culturally complex environments that continue to influence American operations today. The assumption that universal human motivations, money, ideology, compromise, ego, could be leveraged regardless of cultural context proved to be dangerously naive. The Middle East required intelligence approaches that understood tribal loyalties, religious convictions, and cultural narratives in ways that traditional CIA training had never emphasized. Case officers needed to understand not just what motivated individuals, but how those motivations were shaped by social structures that had no equivalent in Western society. This realization led to significant changes in CIA recruitment and training during the 1990s. The agency began hiring more officers with Middle Eastern backgrounds, investing in cultural training programs, and developing operational approaches specifically designed for the region's unique challenges. The impact of these intelligence failures extended beyond CIA operations to influence broader American foreign policy. The overconfidence in human intelligence capabilities led to policy decisions based on flawed information, creating long-term complications in American Middle Eastern relationships that persist today. Looking back at this period, we can see how the CIA's love affair with human intelligence created both opportunities and vulnerabilities that shaped Middle Eastern history in unexpected ways. The agency's aggressive recruitment campaigns did generate valuable intelligence, but they also exposed American operations to manipulation and disinformation on a scale that was unprecedented in CIA history. The story of CIA operations between 1987 and 1991 offers crucial insights into the intersection of intelligence gathering and geopolitics. It demonstrates how institutional culture within intelligence agencies can create blind spots that have strategic consequences. It shows how cultural misunderstanding can undermine even the most well-resourced intelligence operations. And it reveals how the pursuit of intelligence can sometimes become counterproductive when it conflicts with broader strategic objectives. Most importantly, this period illustrates how intelligence failures don't just affect secret operations, they reshape public policy, influence international relationships, and create long-term consequences that extend far beyond the intelligence community itself. The legacy of these 4 years continues to influence American intelligence operations in the Middle East today. The lessons learned about cultural competence, operational security, and the limitations of human intelligence in complex societies have become foundational elements of modern CIA training and operations. Understanding this history helps us appreciate how intelligence gathering is never just about secrets and spies. It's about the intersection of culture, politics, and human psychology in ways that can determine the fate of nations and regions for generations to come. Thank you for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe.